What's going on, everybody? I hope you're enjoying your Tuesday morning so far. This is NYGGFT85 here, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of New York Giants news surrounding some players that are going to be coming in for a visit this coming week as we inch closer and closer to the beginning of the NFL draft, which is literally only about 16 days away. The Giants are pretty much doing a lot more of their due diligence as they get closer to the NFL draft. And they're going to be starting to bring in players for visits, just last minute stuff, talk to some of these players, get a gauge on them. And this could obviously either be a smokescreen or this could end up being an indication of where the Giants might go in terms of the draft pick they'll be looking to go after. The news that just dropped this morning is that the Giants are going to be hosting two of the top wide receivers for a visit this upcoming week. And that is University of Tennessee Volunteers wide receiver Jalin Hyatt, who is expected to be coming in for a visit tomorrow. That is per NFL Network's Ian Rapoport. And then you also have University of Southern California's or USC wide receiver Jordan Addison, who is expected to come in and visit the Giants this week, as well as he's going to be visiting the Minnesota Vikings and the Buffalo Bills this week too. So you're pretty much going to be getting two of the conscientious top wide receivers in this upcoming draft. And there was a report that came out not that long ago, I believe it was like a couple of days ago, saying that NFL draft experts are not that high on this wide receiver class that's coming out right now, and they believe that the only wide receiver that is really worth a first-round grade in this upcoming draft is Jackson Smith-Njigba. At this point, I don't care what the draft experts say. I mean, it really is more about what these wide receivers and where these wide receivers fit, what type of system they fit in the best, how you could utilize them the best. It's really more about that than more about, what they might be graded as immediately coming out in this NFL draft and what you might think their projection is going into the NFL and how they might translate towards, the NFL going forward. I'm not really surprised the Giants are bringing in Jordan Addison. I figured that would be that's par for the course. I mean, a lot of people are saying that he could be one of, if not the top wide receiver that's coming out of this NFL draft. There's been reports it could be Jackson Smith-Njigba. There's been Quentin Johnson out of TCU. Obviously, you have Zay Flowers out of Boston College. These got Jackson Smith-Njigba, of course, out of Ohio State. These guys have really been the conscientious top wide receivers that a lot of people have had interest in coming out of this NFL draft. And while it is not exactly, to the level, like I mentioned before, the wide receiver classes, maybe not to the level talent-wise of what it was the past three drafts, when in 2020 you had guys like Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins coming out of that NFL draft, Michael Pittman Jr., and then 2021 you had Jalen Waddle, you had Devontae Smith, you had Jamar Chase, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown coming out of that NFL draft. Elijah Moore is another one. Kadarius Toney. And then obviously in 2022, last year, you had, of course, Garrett Wilson. You had Chris Olave, to name a couple that came out of this past draft. Traylon Burks was another one. Those top wide receivers that came out of last year's draft. Wan'Dale Robinson, obviously, with the Giants, another one. So, I mean, this year you don't really have probably the level of skill of the wide receivers coming out of this draft compared to last few drafts, but it's a very deep class. Like I mentioned before, I believe this is a deep class of quality wide receivers that you can get yourself a solid wide receiver in one of the mid rounds. In like the second to fifth round, you can get yourself a pretty good wide receiver like a Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss, a P.J. Washington out of Penn State, a Cedric Tillman, teammate of Jalin Hyatt out of Tennessee. I mean, you got A.T. Perry out of Purdue. You got Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State. You got Dante Demos and Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland. You got Jonathan Downs, who's going to be a first-round pick out of North Carolina. Rashee Rice out of SMU. You got Andres Ilyasovas out of Princeton. I mean, there's a lot of good quality. Tim Scott out of Cincinnati. I mean, there's really a lot of quality wide receivers coming out of this draft. Wickerson out of Virginia. Trayvon Wickerson coming out of Virginia. That's another one. There's a lot of good quality wide receivers that are going to be coming out of this draft. And while I get, Giants are doing their due diligence right now, bringing in guys like Jalin Hyatt, like Jordan Addison. I would not be shocked if maybe they bring in a Quentin Johnson. If they obviously are going to bring in, a Zay Flowers, which they did it last week, but they might do it one more time before they get ready for the NFL draft. This is just par for the course, bringing in all these quality wide receivers to get a visit with them and pretty much like a last gauge with these players before Joe Shane, Brandon Brown, Brian Dable, Wink Martindale, Mike Kafka, and the rest of the New York Giants front office and coaching staff really start evaluating their board, and they start evaluating what might be the best course of action to go through in this NFL draft. So I'm a fan of Jordan Addison. I think he's a very underrated route runner. I think he's a terrific player coming out of USC. I think he was a better player, maybe a higher prospect. I'm not the only one that said that. When he was playing out of Pittsburgh back in 2021, he didn't have as strong of a season in 2022, but I believe it's because they were more of a run-heavy offense over there in USC. But Addison is one of the best route runners in this NFL draft coming out. Doesn't have a lot of size, 6 foot, about 185, 190 pounds, but he's more of a route runner, which is exactly what the New York Giants and Joe Shane have said. They're looking for guys that can create separation, not necessarily looking for guys for size. And Jalin Hyatt, as we know, he's more of an undersized wide receiver, about 180, 185 pounds, 5'10", 5'11". He's more of the speed guy on the outside and over the middle. He's not really a great route runner. He still needs to get more refined with his route running overall, but he's a guy that can beat you with top-end speed. So I'm not surprised the Giants are looking for somebody like that, but then at the same time, you have guys like Darius Slayton and Paris Campbell already on the roster who are not exactly, tall wide receivers. Slayton's 6'1", and Campbell's 6'1" as well. So, but at the same time, it makes sense. Keep looking at the wide receiver position because, like I mentioned before, the wide receiver position after this year, you only have 2 guys that are under contract in 2024, and that is Darius Slayton, who signed a 2-year deal, and then obviously the rookie, Wan'Dale Robinson. Everybody else are under 1-year contracts, so it doesn't hurt to pretty much scout and looking at top wide receivers that are coming out. You never know. You put some of these guys in the right system, you might be able to get the most out of these guys, like a Jalin Hyatt, like a Jordan Addison, like a Quentin Johnson, or a Jackson Smith-Njigba, or Zay Flowers, Joshua Downs, Rashee Rice, Cedric Tillman, A.T. Perry, Xavier Hutchinson, P.J. Washington, Tre'Davious Vicks, Jonathan Mingo, Dante Demos, Raheem Jarrett, Rashee Rice, Andres Ilyasovas, Tim Scott. I could keep going on and on with the wide receiver position. You guys know how much I appreciate the wide receiver position. It's my favorite position on the football field, and there's a lot of good quality depth players. So I think that the Giants, in my opinion solely, I believe the Giants are just doing this to get their due diligence out there. I'm starting to lean more towards they're not going to go wide receiver in the first round. I think because of the quality depth. I think they're going to lean a little bit away from wide receiver in the first round unless they believe that a prospect that somehow drops near 25 and unless they want to trade up a couple of spots to get him. I do believe that they're going to be leaning more towards pass rush, edge, or outside linebacker. Cornerback, I think, is also going to be an option. I would not be shocked if the Giants go offensive center or guard in the first round too, because of the fact they need to continue to fix up that interior of the offensive line. Because I don't care what Joe Shane and these guys say. They might be very high on Joshua Zudo and Marcus McKeithen, but McKeithen's coming off a serious knee injury and has proven nothing so far as a 5th-round pick out of North Carolina. And same thing of Joshua Zudo. He looks great right now in run blocking, but in terms of his pass protection, it's still something to be desired, and he's coming off a serious neck injury. So if there's a guard out there that the Giants look at and says this guy can come in and become an absolute force on the offensive line at the guard position, I'm taking a chance on it and I'm drafting him in the first round. Same thing with the cornerback position. When you got guys like Dante Banks out of Maryland, you got Witherspoon, out of Clemson. You got Gonzalez out of Oregon. You got Ringo out of Georgia. There's a lot of good quality players coming out in this NFL draft at the cornerback position too. So you have to make sure you keep your eye and open on everything. But this wide receiver position is loaded. I have to see it. I would not be shocked if the Giants do end up going wide receiver in the first or even the second round. I don't, because I think they know the fact that they want to add themselves a young, explosive outside and slot option in the middle of the field that's going to be able to continue to create separation and is going to be that reliable target for Daniel Jones or whoever the quarterback might be if Daniel Jones is only here for the next 2 years going forward. So you want to have yourself a top target for Daniel Jones or your quarterback to be able to get open consistently in the middle of the field, and a Jalin Hyatt, because of his speed, is able to do that. The guy runs about a 4.2, 4.3 sub speed in the outside, and also a Jordan Addison, who is a terrific route runner, can get open in space and be able to create separation in the middle of the field. Not exactly a yard after catch guy, but he's a guy that's able to create separation because of his elite route running that he has coming out of college. Same thing with a guy like Zay Flowers, who is also an underrated route runner, and he's got some good, decent separation skills in the middle of the field. So this isn't surprising me. We'll have to wait and see what other players the New York Giants are going to be bringing in for a visit. But right now, it's the couple of wide receivers that are coming in. Wide receivers Jalin Hyatt out of Tennessee and Jordan Addison out of USC that are coming in for visits. Addison is going to be visiting the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings as well as the Giants this week. And then you have Jalin Hyatt, who's going to be making a visit with the Giants tomorrow, according to NFL Network's Ian Rapoport. Just wanted to give you guys that news real quickly. Hit that like button if you haven't already and give a sub to NYGJeffyT85. More news updates and chatter surrounding the New York Football Giants. Turn on the bell for notifications of the next video or short dropping on the channel surrounding the New York Giants. And you guys let me know in the comment section what you think about the Giants bringing in wide receivers Jalin Hyatt and Jordan Addison for a visit this coming week. Hyatt more today or tomorrow. Addison's coming in for the week. And what you think right now. We're talking about April 11th, 2023. Where do you think the Giants might be leaning and going with their 25th overall pick going into the first round of the NFL draft that starts on April 27th through April 29th? Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Take it easy, and let's go New York Football Giants. As always, together blue, everyone.